F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
7 months on from Bahrain, where we kicked off proceedings for this, the longest season in Formula One history. We arrive in Mexico for the Mexico City Grand Prix, round 20, ahead of the 5 ferocious rounds to end this season. We're at the Autodromo Circuit Hermano Rodriguez, situated over 2,000 metres above sea level, where there is now a 57-point gap between Max Verstappen, who sits at the top of the Drivers' Championship, extending his lead over Lando Norris after Austin last weekend. And ahead of us now, over the course of the next hour or so, the final practice session before we get stuck into qualifying. And to guide you through all the action is myself, Harry Benjamin, McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird, and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Sam, well, I should have introduced you as the GT Pro lap record holder around this Mexico City circuit. You know it well. How is it to drive?
Well, I'm very disappointed that you didn't, Harry.
I can only apologise.
Hello, everybody. I find Mexico City a really interesting track to drive, very challenging. It's going to be extremely tight come qualifying. I think lap times all will be within probably a second, and it's going to be extremely difficult to get a clean lap. Sector 3 is very slow. Everybody concertinas up, and we might see a couple of surprises out there.
Yeah, just over 4.3 kilometres, 2.6 miles this track, 20 corners, 7 to the left, 10 to the right. But often everybody talks about dealing with the altitude here, right? How do you go about getting your head around that, training for it in the build-up?
All of these drivers are super fit, so the drivers, I don't think it's too much of an issue for them. It is taxing on the car though, so with the high altitude, the cars are able to go quite a bit quicker in a straight line. However, the engine needs a lot more cooling. It simply, you can't run the full power. Because of the altitude, the engine is not running at its effective full capacity. So we will still see speeds of 340, 350 kilometers an hour at the end of the long straight.
Well, the grandstand slowly filling up ahead of FP3, partly cloudy overhead as well. Air temperature about 18 degrees, track temperature 34.6 degrees with about 55% humidity as well. And the Mexican flags, of course, out in force along with the Sergio Perez merchandise, a man with a lot of pressure, not only for his home race, but also to try and keep in that seat for next year. But in the, overnight gap between FP2 and FP3, the big news that was hanging over us really from Austin around this what was deemed as a controversial incident, penalty given to Lando Norris for his passing off the track of Max Verstappen in Austin. And if I bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson on this, last time we spoke to you, Andrew, on air, well, the FIA McLaren had requested a right of review of that incident with the FIA. What's happened in between FP2 and now?
Two things, Harry. One is that McLaren's right to review was unsurprisingly rejected. They never get accepted, these things. What was interesting about it, though, was that the reasons why McLaren were basically saying you made the wrong decision in the first place, and the FIA turned around and said, well, you can't question our decision with a right to review, which is a bit weird. It's like saying because you can't appeal an in-race penalty, you can do a right to review. But if you do a right to review, you can't question the decision that was made. So, okay, fair enough. So move on from that one. What subsequently happened, or what subsequently emerged, you can read about this on the BBC Sport website, is that at the drivers' briefing yesterday, there was it was a well-mannered conversation between the drivers and the FIA, but basically the drivers questioned what had happened, the decision making in the Norris-Verstappen incident in Austin, and when the FIA gave the explanation, quite a few drivers said we don't agree with that, and the FIA said, well, we're not sure we agree either, so they're going to go and they're going to revise the racing rules and bring them back to the drivers at a subsequent race. They haven't said which race. To try and address their questions. Basically, the vast majority of the drivers agree that the wrong decision was made, and the fundamental issue was not that Norris had overtaken off track, which he had, but that he'd been forced there by Verstappen because Verstappen's effectively gaming the rules at the moment. He's complying with the rules, but as we discussed extensively yesterday, he's exploiting the one that says if you're defending on the inside, as long as your front axle is ahead of the front axle of the car on the outside, you can run him off the track. And the drivers say that's not fair.
And well, Sam, as a driver, we haven't really heard your thoughts and opinions on this as a whole. Where do you stand?
No, I agree with the drivers that obviously sat down and spoke about this. Me and Andrew had a chat about it prior to coming on air. I think we're all in agreement that this needed to be changed, and it's good that the FIA are going to look into this and make some changes. Max was executing everything to the letter of the law and being very smart with what he did, but we can't continue to race like that, I don't think.
Well, the guidelines then may well be adjusted and evolved as we move on from this, but one thing's for sure, that gap will stand between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. 57 points at the top of the standings as FP3 gets underway. George Russell heading out onto the track along with Valtteri Bottas and Fernando Alonso also emerging from the pits. For those who wish to do a sync-up, it's 59 minutes and 3, 2, 1... 0 seconds remain of the final practice session ahead of qualifying. Just behind Lando Norris in the driver's standings is Charles Leclerc. He's only 22 points behind, courtesy of a really strong result for Ferrari last time out in Austin. Piastri is fourth ahead of Carlos Sainz. And over in the constructors, well, we really are having a brilliant battle play out. McLaren currently lead by 40 points ahead of Red Bull. And it's Red Bull who are the ones under pressure now, possibly losing second place in the constructors, because Ferrari are only 8 points behind. Then comes Mercedes and Aston Martin, who round out the top 5. Haas are in that coveted 6th spot in the constructors, although they're only 2 points ahead of RB, so that is going to be fiercely contested. Williams only a further few points behind. Alpine 9th, and Sauber rounding out the 10 constructors. Sauber the only team yet to get off the mark after 19 rounds of racing. Can they score any points before the end of the year? It's looking rather bleak for them as they slowly morph into what will be the Audi team. It's a crucial weekend, Sam, isn't it, for the like of Lando Norris in this championship challenge. They have got an upgrade, though, this weekend with the floor.
Yeah, they do have an upgrade. I expect them to be competitive at this track. I think Ferrari look pretty strong as well. As we've spoken about, Max has had a difficult time over first and second practice with a load of engine woes. But looking at yesterday's the form book, I think you can't read anything into anything from yesterday, to be honest.
You weren't with us yesterday, but you weren't listening to FP2 tyre testing for the full hour and a half, getting all of our insights?
No, but
I tell you what, mate, thank goodness for your sake that you weren't. Deary me, it was like the worst session I've ever seen, I think.
I had a great time.
But in terms of a pecking order, I don't think we learned much from yesterday, apart from Ferrari looked quite competitive. We expect McLaren and Red Bull to be there or thereabouts with them as well. What's also really interesting is because of yesterday and some drivers, the lack of running that they've had, we're seeing Max Verstappen now already on the soft compound tyre. We've seen Russell out on the medium, so we're going to see a real mixed bunch all the way through this session.
Well, you mentioned there about Max Verstappen, who is on his first flying lap at the moment. He's on the soft tyre, fastest of anybody in the first sector. Nobody's set to full lap time yet, though. On those engine woes he had, Red Bull have changed Verstappen's engine for another one in the pool, so he will not get a penalty because they say of intake air circuit leakage, which could not be thoroughly resolved ahead of the third practice session. So there was a lot of work going on in that Red Bull garage yesterday as Verstappen comes through the Forest Hall now. Has to have a couple of goes at getting it turned in through that tight left-hander of turn 13 as he comes out of the final corner of the Peloton and across the line. It's a 1:18.397, first effort from the reigning champ.
Yeah, well, it was a pretty scrappy final sector, to be honest. I don't think the track's at its best yet. We'll see times evolving and getting better through the session. Listening into the engine, it didn't sound completely crisp. If I'm being honest, it didn't sound at its best, but he'll no doubt, if there is an issue, he'll be straight on the radio, won't he?
Most successful driver on this track is Max Verstappen, 5 times a winner around here. hoping to make it 6 come Sunday afternoon, and that will really be at the recompense of Lando Norris. That championship challenge is slowly dwindling. It is still mathematically possible, and with those engine problems perhaps hanging over Verstappen, well, who knows what will happen in this final session. A man not too much in a rush to get into his car is Liam Lawson, who is the man who replaced Daniel Ricciardo for the rest of the season, making a really good result actually in Austin, rising up from 19th to 9th. A brilliant result for him in his first race back, and he's a man putting Sergio Perez under pressure, and even more so under his home race.
I'll tell you what, I was just thinking that yesterday was the most incident-packed, boring day in the history of Formula 1 almost, wasn't it?
There's the headline.
I really missed out, didn't I, chaps?
2 big accidents, you know. Alex Albon and Ollie Behrman collided in first practice, and Albon missed the entire second session as a result. And then in the second session, George Russell made it 4 Mercedes incidents on 4 consecutive on-track days from the start of the Austin weekend, when he crashed very close to the same place as Alex Albon, actually, in the S's, where I think it was maybe the corner before or the corner after, all on his own that time. And it looked very much like sort of similar sort of problem to what Hamilton and he discovered or experienced, I should say, in turn 19 at Austin last weekend, which was the car getting into a sort of bouncing situation and then the driver losing it as a result. And Sam and I were discussing before the session, it looks like Mercedes had kind of a little bit fallen back into where they were at the beginning of the season, where if they're quick, they don't really understand why, and if they're slow, they don't really understand why that is either.
And that's a worry.
Yeah.
They're back. We all thought they'd suddenly started to make a bit of an impact sort of in the middle of the season, Sam. You know, Spa was a great weekend for them. Obviously, George Russell got disqualified for the win, but Hamilton was right there to take it. Silverstone, take us back to that amazing race that we got to call it. And suddenly we're all thinking, Mercedes are back, here we go. And now it just seems that really since the summer break and after it's been a downward trajectory once more, and they've gone back to being lost again.
Ever since this new regulation of car has come out, I don't think Mercedes can hand on heart say that they've got it right, can they? They went with the narrow side pod, that didn't work, that put them on the back foot aerodynamically compared to their competitors, the likes of Red Bull and McLaren, and they're fighting to get back to those dizzy heights of always being at the front. And it's hard when you're behind, Harry. It is really, really hard to try and catch up when you're that far back. It takes some doing.
And well, because of the big incident for Russell in Austin, they did bring some upgrades that weekend, and well, they're now out of spare upgrades, so Hamilton gets all the shiny new bits. And with another hit in practice yesterday for George Russell, Mercedes had to stay up late repairing that car. They broke the curfew. They get 2 jokers for that, so they don't take any penalty for that one. They've changed George Russell's chassis. They believe the gearbox and power unit is okay, so no further penalties coming for George Russell on that front. He is out there at the moment, just on and out lap. Fastest time still belongs to Max Verstappen. Pierre Gasly is second. Only 2 cars have set lap times so far. Gasly on the mediums, over 1.5 seconds back from Verstappen, as Lewis Hamilton gears up for his first flying attempt down the main straight. 1.2 kilometres with the DRS that's been slightly shortened for this year before he slams on the brakes and turns into the right-hander of turn 1.
And he geared up for that lap with quite a big slide through Peraltada, the final corner, so not brilliant for Hamilton on his first lap out in this session.
No, it's here from Verstappen on the radio.
No real grip, to be honest. Low speed, maybe. Understood.
I have no rear grip, to be honest. Low speed mainly from Max Verstappen. Again, not comfortable out there, but I mean, how much does this track take to ramp up? The high altitude does sort of give an impression of low grip in these cars.
Well, before the Formula 1 cars were out on circuit today, they had some kind of touring cars, so local touring cars. They would have scattered a load of not debris but sort of dust and oil and different. It's a different tyre that they use obviously in those local cars. That will give less grip. It'll take a little bit of time for this circuit to clean up again. We're seeing Lewis Hamilton currently really struggling for traction and rear end grip as well, so it's not just Max Verstappen, they're all struggling. Lewis Hamilton comes across the line 6.5 tenths slower than Max Verstappen, so yeah, everybody's struggling for rear grip currently.
This is the sound of George George Russell making his way through the S's in that middle sector, the scene of the crime yesterday for him, makes his way safely through on that front. He's on the soft tyre, brakes for the right-hander of turn 12. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector through the Forosol Stadium section, which is now very much getting busier and busier. Has to have a little bit of two goes on the turn in through 14 and 15, then out through the final two corners, 16, 17 round the Peraltada and across the line for George Russell. Does indeed go fastest by less than half a tenth of a second, a 1:18.284 for Russell. As we're just hearing another look of George Russell, and Andrew caught this as he was gearing up for his first flyer. Hamilton, I should say, apologies. He's gearing up for his first flight, just gets a kick on the rear end as he applies the throttle, Sam.
Yeah, and then he locked up down here at the end of sector 1, front left just giving up a little bit. That pushed him wide, and that would have made the next corner, which is turn 5, even harder. So a tighter radius there, so time lost in those areas.
Fastest lap time then, a 1:18.284. Verstappen second ahead of Hamilton, Ocon and Gasly. The only 5 drivers to have set any kind of lap time. Bottas, Alonso and Stroll are all out there. Everybody else not in too much of a rush this afternoon, Andrew.
So talking about Mercedes' struggles to get on top of this generation of cars, and also in the context of McLaren's new floor, which has been many months in the development. I remember talking to Andrea Stella, the team principal, about this floor that they had in development as long ago as Hungary, and they've been waiting, iterating it because they wanted to be sure that it was going to do what they wanted when they put it on the car. Lots of teams this year have had problems with bringing new floors to the car, which then don't perform as they expected. One of the reasons is because the simulations between the CFD and the wind tunnel and then the track performance, they don't tally up often because of the complexity, and it's because the airflow is so complex under the floor. If you think about it, if you look at the front of a Formula 1 car floor, it's got 4 vertical strakes, right? And they then sort of taper out as they go along the length of the floor. They set up a series of what they call vortices, which is like a spinning tornado of air. Many of them. And those vortices have to sort of coalesce through the floor. And the more you can coalesce the vortices, the more downforce you've got. But it's really hard to control them. And you've got this, if you look at the side of a car's floor, there's another series of little sort of mini strakes, which are sort of, they're there to sort of force the air out of the floor at the side and create more of a vacuum effect under the car. And you think about all the multiplicity of vortices that's going on under a Formula 1 car, and then you think about how it's moving as it goes along the track, you know, pitching and yawing, bouncing, hitting bumps, track surface changing, different cambers, hitting curbs. It's no wonder that it's so hard for them to understand and ensure that the airflow is working consistently in the way that they want it to.
And it's all good and well, it working well in a straight line. The floor's got to work well when it's under strain under your mid-corner, and it's there that it becomes very, very tricky. In those kind of situations, it's very difficult to simulate in a wind tunnel or in CFD.
You've also got to bear in mind that while it might look like the cars are sort of just sort of driving into the corner like you might drive into a parking space in Sainsbury's or any other supermarket that might be available, actually they're not. They're sliding at all times. Their angle of attack to the corner is changing very slightly all the time, and as Sam could tell us, and I'm sure he will, actually there's a perfect angle for a car to be attacking a corner at, and and the angle is in relation to its direction. So you're very slight. You're not going in. The car is actually not sliding exactly straight. It's sliding at a very slight angle to its direction. I think it's 5 degrees. Does it sound the perfect one? 3 to 4 to 5 degrees, something like that.
Sounds about right.
And you can't tell that often from looking at it on TV. But when you think about that also, and every angle that the car takes as it's going into the corner will change the airflow structures under the car. Your mind starts to melt when you start to think about it. And if you see one of these CFD drawings of a Formula 1 car floor, it's just unbelievable.
Well, it's always amazing that someone like Adrian Newey sort of hand drawing all the designs and where the airflow will bounce when he's designing the cars. When we look back at this kind of ground effect era of car. We're going into 2026, and obviously there's a change in the regulation, mainly focused around the power units, but we are seeing aero changes as well. Has this really worked? Because the idea of this ground effect was to try and get rid of that dirty air, right, that cars were kicking up at the back, to try and increase the racing and make it better so cars could follow. But actually that's starting to come back into play now as we've gotten into a development cycle and more aeros being added. So can you ever win in this kind of scenario here?
I think it's very, very difficult for the FIA to actually get it right. I do. Unless you were to literally take away downforce, and I mean all of it, you're always in a single seater going to have that issue with following. The cars are going so quick, you need the downforce. The braking distances are so small, it's difficult to overtake, so you need DRS, and all the teams now are converging and getting closer together, which means it's more difficult to overtake. It's challenging. It certainly is challenging. You know, we hark back to the good old days, and you know, people of the older generation, let's say, remember battles in the 70s and the 80s, but aero was less understood back then. I mean, literally, unless we went back 30, 40 years worth of technology with downforce, I think that we will always have this issue.
It's almost, though, as if actually it would be quite nice to stick with this generation of car for a little bit longer, even though, okay, we are getting some of that dirty air. The racing is quite good. We're getting battles, and then we hit the big reset button again, and it's so often that we see when we do that, suddenly it switches to another dominance of a driver in a team.
Yeah, but Formula One is all about evolution, about pushing the boundaries, changes in technology. So, okay, there's going to be a shift of car design fundamentally for everybody, but it's exciting. It's exciting for the fans. Let's hope that this new generation of car brings even more entertainment than what we're seeing now as we go on board with Lando Norris on a new set of soft tyres.
Into turn one, the right-hander, then you quickly flick to the left, clout the inside curve, through three as well, the right-hander brings you out slightly towards the curve, doesn't get any kick from the rear, does Lando Norris, into the next DRS zone, and actually a bit of a slow car in front of him, gets out of the way. I think that was Yuki Tsunoda as he makes his way through the almost 90-degree left-hander of turn four, through the right-hander, and then it's a series of right-handers really that follow as you get into the middle sector, and he's actually backed off massively after that.
He actually went a little bit deep into four and then got a load of understeer entry to mid-corner of turn 5, and then had a little bit of an oversteer and backed the lap off.
His teammate Oscar Piastri hasn't backed off though, and is making his way on the soft side through the middle sector, approaching the right-hander of turn 12 now. He's about half a second down on Carlos Sainz's middle sector. Carlos Sainz with the fastest time for Ferrari, a 1:17.825 on the soft. The top 7 are all out there on the soft tyre. Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton, Russell, Verstappen, the top 5. Piastri's just making his way round the final corner now. Let's see what he has got. He puts it up into 5th, a 1:18.3. Ahead of Verstappen, then it's Stroll, Alonso in 8th, and then running the medium tyre to kick things off with his Hülkenberg in 9th, ahead of Bottas, Ocon at 11th, Gasly 12th, and we are still awaiting times for the likes of Joe, Tsunoda, Lawson, Magnussen, Perez, Albon, and Franco Colapinto. Norris does set a lap time, but he backed off massively, so only 13th.
Do you want to know something that will blow your mind?
Always.
Okay, so we watch these cars both at the track and obviously on monitors when we're doing commentary as well. And at times it looks like they're on a Sunday drive. They're not. They're pushing to the absolute limits. A mid 1:17 is roughly 17 seconds faster than the lap time I did here in the Ferrari 488 GT Pro.
And you weren't just going for a Sunday drive, were you?
No, I was pushing. I was really pushing. You know, that is how quick Formula One cars are. They are so fast.
17 seconds in, what is it, 2.8 miles, something like that?
Which is outrageous.
It's absolutely mind-blowing, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, Norris is having another attempt, certainly not going for a nice lazy Sunday drive. He's got a bit of flow viz up the left-hand side on the bottom of the sidewall and onto the floor for Lando Norris. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Absolutely wiping the floor with Sam Bird's GT time. Into the final sector now, through the Forosol Stadium, round the final 2 corners that see off this lap. And what's it going to be for Norris now? He's got a proper lap time in. It's a 1:17.902 behind the 2 Ferraris, slots into 3rd.
Yeah, McLaren looks good in the middle sector, but Ferrari looks stronger generally in the final sector in the slow speed. I don't know whether that's purely just slow speed grip or whether they're holding on to their tyres a little bit longer. Interestingly, Norris looks very, very comfortable though on the apex curbs at turn 2 and turn 3. He's able to take a lot of curb at turn 3, something that the Red Bull normally can't do.
He also made quite a mistake, didn't he, at turn 13, got quite wide, missed the apex there through the complex in the baseball stadium.
Alex Albon is out there at the moment in the Williams. Of course, we didn't see Alex Albon in FP2 after that. What was actually a really big shunt in FP1, Sam, wasn't it? Ending up also taking out Ollie Behrman. The stewards did look at that and decided no one was at fault for that one. But that's a huge chunk of time Albon has suddenly missed. And we've got a spinner in the final corner, just trying to get a look. It's one of the RBs. I think it's Liam Lawson, who is just trying to find his way back round. He's right in the middle of the track as they come out to the exit of the stadium, and he's just waiting for a little gap to turn it around, still letting the car run. He won't be able to do a full 360, driving backwards on himself into the green runoff area, so coming back into the stadium and then just gently rejoining onto the tarmac. So I haven't seen how that happened for Liam Lawson, but he lets his teammate Yuki Tsunoda come through, and Lawson will, I imagine, come round the penultimate corner and feed back into the pit lane for a little check over. This is the sound of Alex Albon though, just making his way through the Forosol where Lawson just had his spin. What was the cause for Albon's crash yesterday, Sam, in your opinion?
As we see Albon going up to 13th, not a bad lap really on the medium. A bit scrappy in the final sector, I would have said. But the crash yesterday, I think it was a combination of things. Ollie Behrman was over to right on the right-hand side of the track, exiting turn 9, out of the way. But these cars, you know, they disturb the air so much. As we're watching a replay of Liam Lawson going through the final sector. Oh, it's just a slow, clumsy spin over the curbs as he exited turn 14-15 section. Yeah, Ollie Behrman going slowly on the outside of the track, trying to get out of the way. I think Albon has gone through turns 7 and 8, the 7, 8, 9 section under, you know, on full attack, effectively taken a little bit of curb, got disturbed by the dirty air from Behrman, had a slide, overcorrected and just driven into the side of Behrman. I mean, I don't think Behrman is at all to blame. I think if anybody, it's probably more on Albon than it was on Behrman.
It's a lot to lose though for Williams, who were hoping that they finally had a bit of a driver lineup that were not crashing. Lawson on the radio.
Anything we need to look at, Liam, or you know what's happened?
No, I know what happened.
Lawson knows what happened, so nothing for the RB team to look at then. So I would deduce that perhaps just a little bit of a mistake from Liam Lawson. They're taking a bit too much curb.
I think the sensible thing for Alex Albon to do in that situation was to back off. You know, he's a new driver in a Ferrari. He's going through the S's. You know, it looked like he might have been trying to get out of the way. Well, he was trying to get out of the way, but do you know he's going to be out of the way? To me, you just live there. It's only it's P1, you know, sacrifice for that.
Behrman was fully out of the way. I think, yeah, he could have sacrificed a 10th in that corner. Being the first 15 minutes of FP1, it wouldn't have really mattered, would it? So, yeah.
Yeah, the amount underlines it, isn't it? Early doors in FP1 of all places. It's unnecessarily to have a shunt like that. What about Albon's teammate, Franco Colapinto, who has absolutely come in and blown everybody away, I think it's fair to say, with how good he has been. What are Sam Bird's thoughts on the Argentine?
I think it's been a great surprise. When I heard that he was coming in, I didn't know what to expect. To be honest, I wasn't expecting much, but I think he's really delivered. He's been on pace with Albon pretty much from the get-go, it's been nip and tuck, whereas obviously Logan Sargent was honestly nowhere near the pace of Albon. So I think it's good for Williams that they made that change. I can imagine James Vowles is probably thinking, I wish I'd done that a little bit earlier, to be honest. We could have had a couple more points in the bag. But yeah, I think he's been very strong. There's rumours about where he might go for next year. Obviously, he doesn't have a seat at Williams, but James Vowles would love to see him in a car. I think he deserves a drive for next year, doesn't he?
I think Colapinto is a cause of a lot of headaches now for a lot of drivers and teams up and down the grid, because he is this guy that's come in and been a surprise, not only for his performance but also off the track as well. He's incredibly marketable, incredibly lucrative. Now there's already talk of bringing back a race in Argentina once again. To have that kind of power for Franco Colapinto, who came in as, let's be honest, not even a front runner in Formula 2, to have to wield that. He can't just be a reserve driver next year, Andrew.
There's a lot of money coming in from Argentina already as a result of that, and and I'm all up for an Argentinian Grand Prix. I used to love going to Buenos Aires in the late 90s. It's a fantastic city, it really is. Even if you don't eat beef, which I don't, there's a lot of good beef restaurants there, and they don't mess about, by the way. There's always like a stuffed cow right outside the front, so you're not under any illusions about what you're about to have. Anyway, I digress. I don't know what's going to happen at Sauber/Audi. There's a bunch of drivers, up for that drive. Valtteri Bottas was saying on Thursday that he's sort of negotiated a package with them, but now the ball's in Sauber's court as to decide whether to take him or not. Gabriel Bortoleto, who did a fantastic job on our P1 commentary yesterday, who's leading the Formula 2 Championship, he's in the frame there. And it would appear that Colapinto is now also in the frame, but I think there's a potential even for him at Red Bull. Not Red Bull Racing, but at RB, because they're not at all convinced, obviously, by Perez.
Brakes don't feel good today. They feel numb, especially mid turn 1 to 4. Struggling to stop it at the end of braking.
Okay, copy that. We'll take a look.
Nico Hülkenberg not happy with the braking on his Haas. By the way, the Ferrari drivers are swapping fastest times at the moment. Leclerc went quicker, then Sainz has just gone faster by 0.169 seconds. There's a whole driver merry-go-round potential at Red Bull. Perez is not performing at the moment in the main team. Lawson's being drafted in for Ricciardo in RB, basically as an audition to see whether he could replace Perez next year. If he doesn't, he'll have a seat at RB, and Colapinto doesn't have a seat there. But if they think they're going to ditch Perez, if he can't sort himself out, Lawson might get that seat at Red Bull, in which case there's a seat at RB and Colapinto could get it. Christian Horner's already been talking about how impressed he's been with him. And I'm sure if Formula 1 can see lots of money potentially coming in from Argentina, they may be giving Red Bull a bit of encouragement along that front as well.
Would Red Bull want to try and go back to keeping within their own driver pool, though, at the moment? Because obviously I know Sergio Perez was obviously not in the Red Bull junior team, but they have got Isaac Hadjar, who is currently second in Formula 2. They've got Ayumu Iwasa, who is racing out in Super Formula at the moment. They've got drivers that they have put a lot of money into over the course of their junior careers, and if they take a Colapinto, well, if I'm a Red Bull junior, I'm feeling a bit aggrieved by that.
Yeah, you would feel aggrieved, but at the end of the day, Red Bull's job is to try and win the constructors' title. Now, if they feel that Isaac Hadjar or any of the other drivers that they've got in their pool, young driver pool, they're not up to scratch and don't fit the bill, I don't think they'll have any qualms of looking elsewhere. You know, F1's a cutthroat sport. They will get the best person they can to fit in with Max Verstappen.
Typical Carlos.
That was Piastri on the radio. Typical Carlos. There's been quite a lot of sort of toing and froing on track in the last few minutes. Ferrari's going off track, McLaren's as well. It's getting quite tight in that middle sector.
Actually, just talking about Nico Hülkenberg, as we were briefly then, it reminded me of one of the best and funniest lines in Gunther Steiner's book, which was he said at one point about something, I can't remember what it was, he was as happy as Nico Hülkenberg in a hall of mirrors.
We had a good chat about Nico Hulkenberg yesterday as well. We're talking about Le Mans winners on the grid. Hulkenberg currently down in 7th spot, Magnussen in 6th, but has actually showing a bit of an upturn in form over the last couple of races. We're just getting a load of replays shown to us at the moment. Sergio Perez making his way on a lap and a car going off ahead of him into the runoff area. I think qualifying, especially Q1, is going to be a little bit of carnage, isn't it, with cars trying to get out of the way of fast cars behind them.
I think everybody's going to be nervous about getting a lap in, to be honest. With everybody slowing down in Sector 3, it's going to be really, really tricky for people to get a clean lap in. Plus, it is already tricky enough to do a lap around this circuit. It's very dusty, it's at times quite low grip. You've seen so many people make mistakes at the moment. Yeah, for sure, Q1 is going to be a nervous time. I would say that Ferrari look pretty quick. Everybody else, I think it's going to be a nervous time.
It does seem like Ferrari have the advantage for the moment. 29 minutes and 53, 52, 51 seconds remain of free practice 3. It's Sainz fastest, a 1:17.4, over a 10th.5 clear of Charles Leclerc. Norris is 3rd, Perez 4th, Hamilton is in 5th ahead of Russell. Then it's the 2 Haas cars of Magnussen and Hulkenberg in 7th and 8th. Piastri and Verstappen, who's in the pits, round out the top 10. Tsunoda is 11th ahead of Stroll, Colapinto, Alonso, Albon is 15th ahead of Bottas. Lawson is 17th. Ocon has just crossed the line, improved his time, stays down in 18th ahead of his teammate Pierre Gasly, and Zhou Guanyu down in 20th and last, with less than half an hour remaining on the clock. It's a big weekend for Fernando Alonso, Sam, celebrating 400 Grand Prix entered. And as a man who has also endured and survived and performed in every single season of Formula E, you know what it takes for a long career and to eke out that longevity. What keeps you motivated?
Thank you for complimenting me, but you absolutely cannot compare me to Fernando Alonso.
No, I'm not comparing you.
I mean, what he's been able to do, his longevity and his passion for wanting to win again, is astounding. Like, he's close to mid-40s. It is close to mid-40s, yet he's still able to perform at an elite level with, kids in their early 20s.
He is certainly a man who shows no signs of slowing down just yet. Just getting a look at, one of Alonso's former teammates, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, making his way through the Forest on his last lap around, just taking a lot of curb on the exit as he made his way out of the stadium section through turns 14 and 15. There is that big curve, which if you catch it, just elevates you. That's what caught Lawson out.
Going back to Fernando Alonso, I can imagine he, next year, a little bit like what we saw last season, a really rejuvenated Fernando Alonso when the Aston Martin was right up there and fighting for podiums and potentially wins. I mean, he could have won the Monaco Grand Prix last year had it not have been for a bad strategy call. With the introduction of Adrian Newey going to that team, I think we'll see that rejuvenated Fernando again. He might be a year older, but he definitely won't be slower.
Absolutely not. He is currently down in 14th, though. His teammate Lance Stroll is up in 12th and on a lap at the moment, just passing his teammate, actually giving him a nice little bit of tow down the second DRS straight into the left-hander of turn 4. It's been a bit of a miserable run of form for Lance Stroll in the last few races. Hasn't troubled the points in quite some time. Turns 26 on Tuesday, which I was a bit surprised at. I sort of forget how long Lance Stroll has been in the sport sometimes. A man, of course, who started with Williams, has been on the podium for Williams and setting pole position in Turkey a few years ago with the Racing Point team. Currently, though, not very happy in the Aston Martin. Indeed, hasn't scored points since he got to go all the way back to Hungary, and that's the same actually. Alonso's last points was in Singapore for Fernando Alonso, who managed to come home in 8th spot that time around. But Stroll across the line then, getting into more of a long run simulation of pace. 26 minutes and 16 seconds left on the clock. Sainz and Leclerc, the Ferraris still fastest. Is this something we can start to get excited about, Sam? Because that constructors battle as well is really heating up. Just 8 points Ferrari are behind Red Bull, and then McLaren still with that advantage of another 40 points up ahead. But this is a three-way fight.
I'd be more excited if Lando and Piastri were ahead of the Ferraris.
Take that McLaren hat off.
No,
for 2 minutes.
I refuse to take it off. No, it is exciting. You know, we all want both championships really to go down to the wire. We've seen the gap between Max Verstappen, Lando and Norris. It grew obviously last time out with the penalty to Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc closing in on Lando, and obviously Ferrari closing in on Red Bull in the constructors. It would mean, in order for Lando to catch Max now, we need a DNF from Max probably this weekend or next weekend, realistically, and then for him to beat him for the remainder of the season. We're going on board with Nico Hülkenberg, a lock-up in the stadium.
Tri-Funk 4, turn 13.
Tri-Funk 4 in turn 13. Haven't heard that one before from the Haas team. That's an interesting switch on the Haas car, but he was having a bit of issue there. And we've just seen a replay and one of the best saves.
Bella questa.
Is one of Charles Leclerc's engineers, the man who sends him out into the pit lane and looks for the all clear, tripping over and doing a full-on almost backflip on the ground, styling it out nicely with a smile on his face as well. Just letting Charles Leclerc know. I wonder if he could do that every time.
Simone Biles would have been happy with that, wouldn't she?
That was gold medal worthy from the mechanic there for Charles Leclerc, who is actually back into the pits now. So that was a little earlier on, just seeing that replay. Liam Lawson out on track along with his teammate Tsunoda, the two Aston Martins, Russell and Gasly, the only cars out on track at the moment, as Charles Leclerc is now appearing back out from the pits. And what I'm liking about Formula One right now is we talk about Fernando Alonso and we've also got Lewis Hamilton. We've got those sort of stalwarts of the grid, and it's an absolute privilege to have them still racing and still fighting it out. But I'm loving the fact that we're seeing an influx of new talent and rookies. You know, next year, Ollie Behrman, Kimi Antonelli, Jack Doohan. We could well get a Gabriel Bortoleto as well on the grid. That's a huge influx. Don't forget Lawson as well, obviously, if he can hold on till next year, which I'm sure many expect him to do. It's an exciting time for young talent coming into Formula One, because I feel like we were getting to a stage where we weren't seeing a lot of new faces for a little while.
No, sometimes it gets a little bit stale, doesn't it, for a few seasons, but certainly next year we're going to have 4 or 5 kind of fresh faces, really young, talented individuals that have come through the ranks, proven themselves, and Liam Lawson, I am excited about Liam Lawson. I think he's driven pretty much everything and anything and been quick in everything he's ever done. So I'm tipping him for really good things.
I remember him doing very well in a DTM season, I think, with the same year Alex Albon took part in it.
I think he
as well.
Just missed out on the title to, was it Maxi Götz?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And he lost out at Norris Ring in the final race of the season.
And that was his first year in DTM machinery,
his
German
year
touring car. Exactly. And I think that was the same year as Alex Albon had his sort of sabbatical in DTM, and he beat Alex Albon. So I think somebody like Albon's going to have a bit of pressure piled onto him next year once Carlos Sainz comes into the team as well. Talk of Lawson, his teammate Tsunoda is on the medium tyres, just put it up into third. Tsunoda's been going quite well so far this weekend, has been right up there in the times. It's Sainz though, still fastest. Going to see what else he's got. Those on an outlap at the moment, along with Charles Leclerc. Tsunoda pops up to the third. Norris, Piastri, the top 5. Perez is in 6th ahead of Hamilton. Russell is 8th. The two Haas cars of Magnussen and Hülkenberg 9th and 10th. Verstappen, who hasn't done too many laps.
We haven't seen very much of Max Verstappen at all since the very first 5-10 minutes of the session. He's sat in the pits an awfully long time.
Although he has done, according to the timing, 16 laps out there.
I was going to say, we haven't seen him on telly, but he's done 16
so
laps.
he has done, it's actually almost the most of anyone, so we've just not seen him.
It didn't happen.
So clearly they're not too troubled down there, but he's not chasing out like lap time just yet, down in 11th, only ahead of Stroll. Colapinto Alonso's down in 14th, but really it's been the blind leading the blind in terms of what's going on in terms of the pecking order this weekend, because yesterday was a little bit of a write-off with that tyre test, and not to mention it was just a messy day yesterday with so many crashes and red flags. So today is really the first proper inclination of where we might be in that pecking order, and right now it really is going Ferrari's way. Now, Andrew, maybe you might know a little more on this. Leclerc's just coming around the final corner now and actually finds time, 17 thousandths of a second now clear of his teammate Carlos Sainz. Now, Ferrari didn't declare any upgrades in Austin last time out, even though team principal Fred Vasseur, the weeks building up to it, was alluding to there being an upgrade. But of course, they only have to declare any upgrades and alterations that can be seen on the exterior, right? So there is a bit of rumour, a little bit of gossip that maybe there was something that we just didn't see and they didn't have to declare.
I don't know is the answer, Harry, but I think so. I can't answer that question, but what I can say is that Ferrari introduced a new floor in Monza, and although it was for Monza, which is a very specific type of high-speed, low-downforce circuit, it wasn't meant to be just for Monza. It was a sort of holistic upgrade for the car, aimed at addressing the issues that they had with the floor that they introduced in Spain, which they then had to abandon. And they believed it would help their performance everywhere. It's just that Austin was the first track that wasn't of a similar character, so fundamentally sort of slow corner biased, for example. So because you had a run of tracks, you had Monza followed by Baku followed by Singapore, all tracks where Ferrari typically go well, and where this particular Ferrari, its strengths in slow speed corners are emphasised. So they went to Austin thinking or hoping that it would translate to a circuit of a sort of wider range of corner speeds, and it did. So I think just because their performance looked so good on that kind of circuit doesn't necessarily mean they had to have a secret upgrade. It was just evidence of the previous upgrade working really well. And now back in Mexico, although the SEs are quite high speed, most of the corners here are slow speed, and it's high downforce. So it's a Ferrari style circuit. So I'm not that surprised to see the Ferraris trading times at the top. I don't think they'll have half a second on the field, which they have at the moment, and nor do I think Yuki Tsunoda, who will be third in qualifying, which he is at the moment, and was yesterday, I believe, in P2 in that crazy, exciting Pirelli tyre test session. But let's not forget that Daniel Ricciardo qualified really high up in the RB, not that it was called an RB, last year. Yeah,
he finished fourth here last year to Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe this is a sort of secret circuit that RB have the key to unlock. I don't know. I
do think they go well around here. Just on Ferrari though, Andrew, Fred Vasseur and his tenure so far as team principal. How are you looking on it so far? It seems like, to secure Lewis Hamilton and the development rate they're going at, it seems like it's been a good integration for Vasseur.
I think Fred Vasseur's played an absolute blinder on a whole bunch of different levels. I don't know whether, Sam, have you ever raced for Vasseur's teams?
I did. So I was Jules Bianchi's teammate at ART in GP2, and Fred was the boss.
So I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, but what he's done is he's just calmed everything down. He's taken all the drama out of Ferrari. Mattia Binotto basically got fired at the end of 2022. They didn't present it as being fired. He resigned in official parlance, but here's Colapinto's radio.
I hit the floor quite hard exit of 3.
Yeah, we saw it in the data. We'll have a look at it when you come back in.
So he hit the curb, and he's worried about damaging the floor there. We're just seeing him bouncing along the exit curb at turn 3 as evidence of that. But John Elkann, the Ferrari chairman, basically said, "You're off, mate," to Mattia Binotto, and they made it look respectable publicly. They had a difficult year that year. They had the fastest car at the start of the season. They threw away their massive championship lead that Charles Leclerc developed in the first 3 races with a series of errors, basically strategic errors, reliability failures, 1 or 2 driver errors from Leclerc as well, which were pressure errors, I think, when you look back on them. Vasseur's come in, and slowly but surely he's just sorted all of that stuff out. They don't have reliability problems anymore. The strategy is much more solid. They do make the odd mistake, everybody does, like they sent Leclerc out on Inters on a dry track in Silverstone, for example. But which I mentioned to Fred Vasseur the other day when we were having a bit of a debate about something. But anyway,
Did that win you the debate?
We'll leave that one. Anyway, and of course, yes, he signed Lewis Hamilton, and there was a wobble in the middle of this season where it looked like they'd lost their way a bit. Well, they did lose their way a bit, but they got right back on it again with this new floor, and now we're talking about them potentially winning, or they're talking about them potentially winning the Constructors' Championship, which for Ferrari will be the first time since 2008. You know, we talk about McLaren, it's a long time since they won it, and it really is. But it would almost be just as big a story if Ferrari could do it. And as I talk, Max Verstappen goes fastest on a new set of soft tyres, 3/10 quicker than the Ferraris. The question I wanted to ask Sam was, what do you see the qualities in Fred Vasseur as that have enabled him to do that job at Ferrari?
I think he's a great leader of men, Andrew. I think he's able to get everybody together working in unison. I mean, the respect that he commanded when I was at ART, and that's a much smaller team. Everybody, he brought the right people in, with the right engineers, the right mechanics on the right projects. I loved driving for him. I wish I'd been able to have a second year with him. Unfortunately, Gutierrez won the GP3 title, and which meant that the second seat next to Jules Bianchi had to go to him. Otherwise, I could have had a second year and fought for the GP2 title the next year. But I hold Fred Vasseur in the highest regard.
He's a really interesting character because he's got a really grumpy resting face, but actually he's got a wicked sense of humour.
Oh, he's so funny.
Yeah.
So funny. I mean, we got on like a house on fire, myself and Fred. I mean, when I see him, he has a nickname for me, and every time he sees me, he wants to, if I'm wearing a hoodie, he wants to grab the hoodie and put it over my head and sort of half strangle me. But yeah, he's a really good guy, somebody that you enjoy being around, but you respect and you want to drive well for at the same time.
And ultimately a man who secured the signature of Lewis Hamilton to drive for Ferrari, and that will put him in the history books.
I think that stems not only... Look, Lewis is one of the greatest of all time, but also Lewis has really fond memories from working with Fred Vasseur when it was ASM, before it turned to ART. Lewis drove for him in Formula 3 Euro Series, and then in the GP2 campaign he did, where he won the championship, and that then, you know, was the stepping stone to him becoming a McLaren Formula 1 driver back in 2006. 2007? 2006? Yeah, 2007. Yeah.
Well, what will the future hold for Ferrari and Fred Vasseur? We shall see. But I tell you what, right now there are some quick lap times coming in now that Red Bull and McLaren are sticking on new soft tyres. Piastri has gone quickest, a 1:16.492, half a tenth clear of Lando Norris, and they are half a second clear of Max Verstappen in third, Hamilton fourth, Carlos Sainz in fifth, then it's Leclerc sixth. So that good lap times from the McLarens, Andrew.
Excellent, but the team we haven't seen on new softs yet are the Ferraris, and so we're waiting for them to come out soon. There's still 12 minutes in this session to go. It looks like McLaren and Red Bull and Mercedes have gone a bit early on their new softs for some reason. Normally it's a little bit later than this, but those are encouraging times for McLaren compared to Red Bull, not so encouraging for Mercedes, because they're half a second off the McLarens, and Russell is having a really bad time because he's 4/10 off Hamilton.
I think Lando Norris is going for a double cool on this set of soft tyres, Andrew.
Worth pointing out that Lando Norris has the new floor and the little upgrade to the front wing that was put in place last weekend in Austin. Oscar Piastri does not. So that's encouraging for Piastri anyway.
Norris was a bit dismissive of the new floor, actually. He said it's not worth much yesterday when he spoke. Of course, I guess he would say that, wouldn't he? But to be fair, McLaren are, although they spent so long developing this floor, they do say they kind of brought it because they were getting to the point where if they didn't bring it now, they weren't going to bring it at all because there's so few races left. But they still see it as at the beginning of its development cycle. So I wonder whether... I don't really know quite what that means, you know, whether this floor comes in and there's going to be some tweaks they make to it. Here's Hamilton's radio.
Okay, Lewis, that's P4 to Piastri. It's just over half a second.
That was a decent lap there. Quick.
They are indeed bleep quick, Lewis. Yes, the McLarens he's referring to there. Or whether there are some other parts coming at the front of the car that will work in concert with that flaw. We'll have to wait and see over the next few races.
Well, the early stages, at least in this practice session, are that McLaren have got the form right now. We wait to see what the Ferraris have got. We'll see it imminently. They are now both out of the pits and on the track on new soft tyres, so we'll see what they've got in a couple of minutes time. Yuki Tsunoda is out there at the moment. He's also on a new set of soft. He finished third in yesterday's practice session, FP2, and going was third earlier on, and is having a personal best in sector 1. Let's see what he can do through the middle sector, through the S's. Tsunoda then, McLaren, just making its way out of the way. He's about 4/10 down as he makes his way through the right-hander of turn 12 into the Foro Sol as the Leclerc Ferrari begins its first flyer, and we'll see what the Ferrari pace is compared to the McLarens and the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. Haven't seen Perez yet either. He is now out there. Tsunoda crosses the line, goes up to 5th in the RB, lost a bit of time in that final sector. Perez is now out there. He's also stuck on the new soft tyre, so we shall see what Perez has got, if he can find an extra few tenths from the home crowd as well to try and keep a toe in and help Max Verstappen and help Red Bull hold on to second in the Constructors' Championship and try and challenge again for the top spot. But Sainz, fastest of anybody in the Ferrari through the first sector. It's a strong lap so far from Carlos Sainz, Sam.
He was looking good yesterday as well, wasn't he? I mean, he topped that wonderful FP2 you guys were on about. He's certainly been on form recently. I think Williams will be very much looking forward to getting him and understanding, right, what can you tell us about the Ferrari from last year and getting him in a debrief. But certainly he's performing very well right now.
Wasn't a great lap from Charles Leclerc though. 7/10 down in 5th behind Hamilton. Carlos Sainz now across the line. That's a little bit more like it. Can't quite match the McLarens though. Sainz slots in to 3rd, 3/10 off of Oscar Piastri as Russell is now out there. That's the sound you can hear coming through the middle sector, through the S's. The right-hander of turn 10 eases off the throttle, then through the left-hander of 11 as you get to the next dosage of DRS. The run down towards turn 12, hit the brakes just before the 50-metre braking board, into the right-hander, losing time in the middle sector for Russell, getting it turned in for turn 14, right in the heart of the Foro Sol, the stadium section, as it bleeds you out through turn 16. The almost never-ending double right-hander of 16 through 17 and across the line for Russell. Improves his time, doesn't prove his position. 8th behind Tsunoda.
Every time that Mercedes tries to negotiate a corner, it's as if they show it the corner and the rear will either over-rotate and they'll have an oversteer, or they'll go straight into understeer and have an oversteer moment on the exit. It's like the drivers don't really know what's going to happen with the car. It looks so nervous and on edge.
Lewis Hamilton threading his way now through the middle sector. Sergio Perez is out there on his first flyer on the new softs at this stage. Personal best through sector 1. To be interested to see where Perez compares to his teammate Verstappen, who is out there once again on another set of new soft tyres for the Dutchman, so he's going to have another run at it with just over 7.5 minutes left of free practice 3. This is the last chance then to really dial in your car before we go qualifying for the Mexico City Grand Prix, and you can listen to qualifying in full on 5 Sports Extra. We'll be on air at 5 to 10 this evening, ahead of the session starting at 10 o'clock. So a bit of a late one for you, but do stay up for us with it, as Verstappen is on an outlet now. Perez does indeed cross the line, but only down in 13th because he made a little bit of a mistake coming into the stadium section, into the left-hander, locked up the front left, and that would have cost him a chunk of time, and that's why the lap didn't deliver at the end. With his father here as well, Antonio Perez, watching on in the Red Bull garage. Does a home race, Sam, give you a little bit of extra something? Are you getting a little bit of extra when you race around the London tracks in Formula E? Or Silverstone in the past?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. One of my favourite moments actually in Formula One recently was when Perez was on the podium here a few years ago, and you saw his father going wild with the Mexican flag. It was such a lovely moment, wasn't it?
It was amazing. It was almost like he'd won. I think Perez was reflecting on that in the build-up to this weekend with his son standing up there on the podium as well. Twice has Perez made it onto the podium here in third, 2021 and 2022. Of course, it all ended for him in turn one of lap one last year. Magnussen.
Russell completely got in your way in sector 3, and he was on an in-lap.
So that was Kevin Magnussen there, who rather had his lap balked by Russell, it seems, on the radio. Hülkenberg also finding the balance a little tricky in his Haas coming into the Forosol section. Both Haas cars down in 15th and 16th at the moment, having stuck on some new soft tyres, but not getting the most out of them, it seems.
It's maybe worth making a point here about McLaren. Oscar Piastri's had a couple of quiet weekends since winning in Baku, with that great move on Charles Leclerc into turn one. And if you remember, around about that time, there was all this talk about McLaren team orders and how they'd agreed that Piastri would help Norris if he could in the championship. He's not had a chance to do that so far because he's been behind him in Singapore and Austin. But if he can qualify up at the front with Norris, which he's, if on the basis of the evidence of this session at least, he can, then that's the sort of thing that McLaren need, or this is one of the things that McLaren need to try and get Norris to close the gap on Verstappen. Because right now, what it looks like is that McLaren and Ferrari are the two quickest teams here. Now, obviously, you can never, ever rule out Max Verstappen. He's so brilliant. But if Norris can win the race with Piastri and two Ferraris between him and Verstappen, that's what he needs to start to get that gap down substantially. He still needs a retirement really from Verstappen, but on average he needs just under 12 points a race. That would give him about 12 points.
But then that would have to happen every weekend. Like you said, the championship, if it's going to go down to the wire and be close going into the final race weekend, Max would need to not finish one race and have a couple of poor races as well, and I can't see it happening.
Yeah, this work. There's no grip, front and rear.
That's Verstappen's radio, not happy. No grip, front and rear. Is down in fourth at the moment. I suppose the other thing about this track, though, Sam, is a long run down to turn one. It's the longest of the season. It's about 830 metres. You almost don't want to be on pole position because you're just going to give everybody a slipstream and they're going to zoom on by you, aren't they?
Yes and no. You do want to be on pole position. You do. But it is a challenge to hold on to it going into turn one. You're right.
It was interesting that yesterday we saw Lando Norris do a practice start and went all the way down towards turn one, right on the inside, braking right on the inside of the corner, the apex. I wonder if he's just having a little practice, if he finds himself on that part of the circuit, how he can get it slowed down, turned in, have that part of the track. Because ultimately, that's, if he has to defend from a pole position, that's the side he's going to be on.
Yeah, but I think if you do that here, I think it would be better to almost take the racing line and brake late and go wide through one and have the inside into two.
Isn't that what Perez tried last year and ended up crashing into Charles Leclerc?
Yeah, they got that wrong.
This is the sound of Sergio Perez, who has not had as good a first sector as he would have liked down on Piastri's time. The two McLarens really are looking strong. Verstappen's having another go as well through the first sector. He set a personal best, but Perez is 7/10 down in the middle sector and can't get it stopped. Coming through the right-hander of turn 12, has to take to the runoff area and back right out of it on both his flying attempts so far. Perez has made mistakes. He's not comfortable in that Red Bull car. The green flag back out in time for Verstappen to come through the middle sector, so that shouldn't have affected him too much, but he has lost time compared to his best sector. Verstappen does feel like he's just struggling to get it round the final two corners for the Dutchman across the line, losing time in the last two sectors. 7/10 down on that lap. It doesn't beat his previous lap time, stays in fourth, half a second down on Oscar Piastri with less than 2 minutes left to go. it's the two McLarens. Piastri ahead of Norris, Sainz is third, then comes Verstappen, Hamilton fifth, Leclerc is sixth. Again, he hasn't had the smoothest of soft tyre running. Tsunoda seventh, Russell down in eighth, with Lawson and Albon rounding out the top 10, or make that top 11, because Kevin Magnussen has just got up into ninth in the Haas. So this is really going to unfold into quite an intriguing qualifying here. It feels like the pendulum has slightly shifted now in McLaren's favour. So we just get another look at what happened to Perez, Sam.
Yeah, outside front lock.
Yeah, there's no potential on the front to attack the braking.
Yeah, he's not happy with the front axles. Basically, they're not connecting to the surface as he'd want under retardation. So a little bit of work to do for Sergio Perez at his home Grand Prix going into qualifying.
Certainly is. Alonso's just come across the line, improved his lap time, but only enough for 15th at the moment as Liam Lawson swings his RB into the pits. A couple of cars lining up at the end of the pit lane for some practice starts, but the clock really ticking down now, the last 30 seconds of this final practice session before we go qualifying later on this afternoon for the Mexico City Grand Prix. That's the sound of Yuki Tsunoda just trundling out from his pit box outside of the RB garage, a man who will get his first proper test in a Red Bull car in the Abu Dhabi Pirelli test following the season finale in December. So Red Bull will be able to analyse what Tsunoda can do in their Red Bull car, how he interacts with the team, what his radio interactions are. That will be a very crucial test for Tsunoda. But really, what happens if Tsunoda beats Lawson for the remainder of the year, does well in the Red Bull test?
Oh, don't ask me this question.
Come on,
I mean, I think Christian Horner and Helmut Marko, I think they've probably already made up their mind as to who they would want to replace Perez if they replace Perez, and I think it's Lawson, personally, unless Tsunoda goes out there and obliterates Lawson for the rest of the year, as you say, and does an amazing job at that test. I think that seat is Lawson's to lose. I think he's got a hand on that seat, personally.
I can tell you what's not going to happen: Yuki Tsunoda being in the Red Bull. Not a chance.
There we go.
Not a chance.
There we go.
From Andrew Benson.
Voice of God.
What, in terms of feedback on the radio, that's something Tsunoda hasn't always been good at. Is it something you had to sort of learn and develop throughout your sort of early racing careers, and how to talk on the radio, almost how to give good feedback?
Different drivers have different emotions and different ways of emphasising what they need. Max is, when it's not going well, he's very, very vocal about it. Other people are a bit more diplomatic and political on the radio with their teams. It also depends on the team. You might have a team that doesn't mind you being more colourful with your language. There are other teams that say, no, you don't do that. This is the way to speak to the team. You speak like this. So, basically everybody's different.
Well, checkered flag is out then. That is the end of FP3, and it's topped by the two McLarens. Oscar Piastri with a 116, I should say, 4.92 ahead of Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz third, Verstappen fourth, with Hamilton rounding out the top five. Leclerc sixth ahead of Tsunoda, Russell down in eighth ahead of Kevin Magnussen, and Liam Lawson rounding out the top 10 in front of Alex Albon's Williams. Bottas is 12th, Colin Pinto 13th, Perez, Alonso the top 15, with Hülkenberg, Stroll, Ocon, Zhou and Gasly 20th and last, in what is a much cleaner session, FP3, than what we've seen in all the Fridays running. But certainly, Sam, it seems like it is advantage McLaren at this stage. Yeah,
advantage McLaren, looking very strong. They seem a couple of tenths up the road from everybody, but I think the fight today will be between Piastri, Norris, Sainz and Leclerc for the front couple of rows.
And what about Max Verstappen, though, in that Red Bull? What happens in between FP3 and qualifying as a driver? What are you going through to try and gear up for Q1?
He's had a really difficult 3 practice sessions, has Max Verstappen. look, he doesn't really have any data to go by with regards to his teammate because Sergio has not been there and on the pace. So it's only his data that he'll be looking at, and it's been like that for quite some time. Let's be honest. But I don't know how they go about it going into qualifying. They've got to change something. But what do they change?
Well, they did do a change of engine ahead of this session after his engine problems in Friday. That seems to have sorted itself out. Andrew, end of practice session 3. That is it now. Next up is qualifying. What are you taking away from Saturday's running so far?
Still a difficult session to read, I think. Doesn't really make sense that Leclerc and Sainz was so fast through the session, and then more than 3/10 in Sainz's case and 7/10 in Leclerc's case off the McLarens at the end. I can't imagine that's going to be the case in qualifying. I think it looked like Leclerc didn't get his lap together on the new tyres, so I'm expecting, just like Sam, to see Ferrari and McLaren battling for pole. The question is, how close can Verstappen get to them, and where will Mercedes line up?
Well, we shall answer all those questions in a few hours' time. You can join us for live qualifying for the Mexico City Grand Prix. We'll be on 5 Sports Extra from 5 to 10 ahead of the session starting at 10 o'clock in the evening. So do stay up for that one. Could be a really pivotal weekend once again for that championship fight. My thanks to Andrew Benson, to McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird. We'll see you a little later on for qualifying. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.